In this video, I'm going to talk about 8 different things I did to help lessen the amounts of heart palpitations that I was experiencing. Just a little background. These began about a year and a half ago, and they were mainly at night, but sometimes they would extend into the morning, and I would have them not every night. So there were some nights I would have them really bad, sometimes I wouldn't have them, and then sometimes they would be mild. And the symptoms were heart fluttering, breathlessness, not being able to sleep because feeling like I can't breathe, even getting bad enough to where I was about to go to the emergency room. I noticed that I was not having them every night, and so I wanted to see what things were causing me to have them and what things would help get rid of them. So I started to research and try different things, and this list is the things that I noticed consistently would reduce the incidence of having heart palpitations, and then not doing these things would cause them to happen more often. So number 1 is removing caffeine. I noticed that the nights where I would have caffeine, especially later in the day, I would have heart palpitations at night. So I tried reducing it, which seemed to help, but then eventually I did cut it out, and you deal with the caffeine withdrawals for the first couple days, and the first week you have no energy. Eventually, after the first month, you start to catch up on sleep, and then you start to build back the energy. I would say it takes probably 3 months to get back to baseline, but eventually you will sleep better, and you'll have more natural energy overall. And through this process, I definitely felt my heart feeling like it was less overworked and able to sleep better. Number 2 is walking. I was not doing any form of cardio training. I was doing weightlifting, but adding in walking or doing a Stairmaster, anything where you're doing cardiovascular training, did help. I started with 5,000 steps a day, and then I worked up to 10,000. Over time, it felt like my heart strength was improving, and I was able to do more intense forms like running and then mountain biking. And through this process, I lost weight, which did improve the heart palpitations. So number 3 is losing weight. After losing about 10 pounds, I noticed that I was able to get to sleep better, and I had less incidence of having heart palpitations at night. After losing 10 pounds, I went back into the healthy BMI, not doing an extreme form of exercise or diet for weight loss, not doing crazy fasting or anything, just eating healthier foods, which will be more in this list, but that did seem to be helpful as well. And number 4 was reducing alcohol, especially sulfites. I noticed one night after having red wine that I had really bad heart palpitations. I don't think I slept at all that night. And then I would notice it after drinking, but especially after drinking cider or wine, which were both high in sulfites. And then I also noticed sort of similar effects with vinegar. So looking into that and seeing that all those things are high in sulfites and they can cause heart issues and also asthma, I cut them out, which was helpful. And then eventually I did cut out alcohol completely, which made a big impact on that. So you might not have to cut it out completely, but you might have to reduce the sulfite containing alcohol, but just try to experiment with different ones or not doing it and see if that has an impact. Number 5 was increasing my potassium to sodium ratio. The proper electrolyte balance is important for heart rhythm, and the ratio is supposed to be higher potassium to sodium. It's 3 to 1 is the ideal ratio, and most people are consuming more, either 1 to 1 or a lot more sodium than potassium, which is what I was doing. If you eat processed food, even if you're just cooking normal things and you're adding a lot of sauces to them, they're going to be really high in sodium. So I increased my potassium foods, and then I reduced the amount of salt that I was adding to my food. And then another thing that I did was add potassium chloride. It's sometimes called no salt, or they sell it as a salt substitute. And I would mix the potassium chloride with sodium at a 1 to 1 ratio, and you can use it just like salt. Be careful with adding in supplemental potassium, not going too high. But I would say that some nights that was the only thing that was able to help me go to sleep. was mixing some potassium chloride in water. Number 6 is reducing the amount of sugar and refined grains that I was eating. I noticed after eating big desserts or big sweets before going to sleep, I was more likely to have heart pain or palpitations. And after losing a little bit of weight from adding in the walking, I was kind of plateaued. So I cut out the sweets during the week. I would give myself a day on the weekend to have some more of them. But I noticed that over time, after reducing this, which also improved my blood sugar levels, that my heart palpitations were lessened. It wasn't a low-carb diet that I was doing. I was still eating some fruits, beans, some grains, but overall it just felt like the health improved, which indirectly helped the heart. Number 7 is magnesium and taurine. A lot of the information, if you look up about heart palpitations, people are going to recommend magnesium, and it definitely was something that made an impact, especially taking magnesium before going to sleep. The forms I would take were magnesium glycinate and magnesium taurate. I took between 250 to 400 milligrams a night, which I noticed experimenting, taking it and not taking it, that I was able to sleep better and have less issues with the heart when I was taking it. And then through reading about magnesium taurate being the best magnesium form for the heart, there's a lot of information about taurine, and taurine can have a positive effect on blood pressure, heart rhythms, and even the heart recovering from injuries. So I added that in. I took 500 milligrams 2 times a day, separate from food, and that seemed to be beneficial as well. And then number 8 is increasing zinc and lowering copper. So there's a disease called Wilson's disease, which people have chronically high levels of copper in their blood, and one of the main issues is having heart arrhythmias. So I noticed too, after eating certain foods like chocolate and shellfish, that I was having heart palpitations, and those foods are really high in copper. So I began to reduce the amounts of the super high copper foods, and then increased the servings of higher zinc foods, which were red meat, chicken, turkey. I would only have red meat maybe once or twice a week, and then I started to supplement zinc, because zinc will help. Raising the zinc generally will lower the copper levels, and I started with 5 milligrams 1 to 2 times a day, and eventually worked up to 50 milligrams a day, split in 2 25 milligram doses. And this did seem, again, to slowly over time help reduce the incidence of the heart palpitations. So in conclusion, I would say dealing with the situation was really frustrating at first, and there were times where I was contemplating going to the emergency room and thought I was going to have a heart attack. But in another way, it was really helpful because it helped me to get healthy overall, and I think that was the biggest thing, was just getting healthy overall made the biggest impact. Some of these things can help, some of them maybe not so much, so you have to experiment with different things and try to keep track of what is helpful and what's not. And there could be things not on this list that you need to try, but I think generally anything that you do that improves your overall health will be helpful to heart palpitations. Some of these things can be big to do, like cutting out caffeine or coffee or cutting out alcohol, and that might not be necessary for everybody. But I would say for me, having to deal with these heart palpitations was motivation enough to not want to. The benefits of those things versus having to deal with the palpitations was way skewed, so cutting them out wasn't as hard as it sounds. But I would just say keep an open mind that things can get better, and that you just it might take time, and you just have to experiment with different things and see how your body responds to the changes.